shoreline in the Black Sea, lay within one of the most heavily monitored low-altitude air patrol zones in Russia's maritime defense grid. This area forms part of the Black Sea Fleet's aerial interdiction belt, where Su-30SM fighter jets routinely patrol between 1,600 and 3,300 feet, tasked with detecting and destroying incoming threats like Ukrainian UAVs and surface drones before they can approach strategic Russian naval hubs. The timing was no accident. Conditions were near perfect for stealth navigation, moonless skies, calm seas, and low morning visibility that limited radar returns and optical tracking. Ambient sea noise was minimal, allowing drone engines running under 45 decibels quieter than a ceiling fan to remain undetectable. Strategically, Russia had recently intensified its low-altitude surveillance net in this sector, believing their current Su-30 patrols, coupled with coastal radar and floating early warning platforms, were sufficient to counter any approach. But this very confidence would be exploited. What began as a quiet, unremarkable night in the Black Sea was about to escalate into one of the most tactically significant maritime air ambushes in modern warfare, a strike that would challenge the entire concept of air superiority by attacking it not from the sky, but from the sea. Russia's low-altitude air defense architecture in the western Black Sea was built around a layered response system, and at its core were the Su-30SM fighter jets. These strange, multi-role aircraft conducted combat air patrols at altitudes between 1,600 and 3,300 feet, circling designated sectors in tight orbits. Their primary mission: detect, track, and eliminate low-flying Ukrainian threats, particularly UAVs and surface drones, before they could threaten Russian naval installations near Novorossiysk. Supporting these patrols were a network of floating radar stations and coastal early warning sites. Together, they formed a so-called early interdiction belt, providing real-time surveillance of surface and aerial approaches across a 40-50-mile range. These assets operated on overlapping radar bands, using sea-skimming tracking algorithms and infrared sweeps during low-light hours. On paper, the system was airtight. No small object could move within range without setting off an alert. But there was a blind spot. Russian doctrine, while deeply focused on threats from above drones, cruise missiles, or aircraft, had largely dismissed any serious danger from below. Unmanned surface vessels, USVs, in Moscow's view, were slow, noisy, and easy to detect, better suited for psychological warfare than actual interdiction. That complacency shaped the defensive mindset in the region. Fighter patrols were calibrated to chase airborne targets, not to prepare for missiles fired from sea level. Interceptors were trained to react within a 2-3 minute window from detection to engagement, assuming the threat was coming from the air. And that's exactly what Ukraine would exploit. By leveraging the predictable rhythm of Russian air patrols and the blind trust in radar-based early warning from above, Kyiv's planners laid the groundwork for an unprecedented vertical ambush targeting air superiority from below the radar horizon. While Russian defenses looked to the skies, Ukraine's planners went to the water. At 12:01 a.m. on May 2, 2025, 3 Mura V-7 unmanned surface vessels, USVs, quietly slipped out of the Nestor estuary, a concealed waterway south of Odessa. These were not kamikaze drones. They were mobile, low-profile strike platforms built to navigate under radar coverage and deliver precision firepower. Each one had a mission, and their entry into the Black Sea was silent by design. The 3 USVs assumed a triangular attack formation, spaced between 1,000 and 1,200 feet apart. This configuration allowed them to operate as a coordinated swarm, while minimizing the chance of all 3 being detected at once. Unit 3, the rearmost vessel, served as the command and relay hub equipped with a long-range encrypted antenna and onboard satellite link emulator to bypass Russian electronic jamming. Internal communications between the USVs were conducted through short-range infrared laser links, making them immune to radio frequency intercepts. To outside sensors, they were just dark blips on the surface of the sea, too slow, too low, and too silent to raise alarms. Navigation was handled with digitized nautical charts, military-grade GPS, and inertial guidance systems. The route was carefully plotted to avoid civilian shipping lanes, floating radar platforms, and underwater sonar arrays. Fuel efficiency was maximized by cruising at just 8 to 9 knots, barely 10 miles per hour, keeping acoustic signatures under 45 decibels, no louder than a household fan. This wasn't brute force, it was infiltration. Every mile traveled brought them deeper into Russia's blind spot, the surface level. By the time Russian radar would register anything unusual, it would already be too late. The drones weren't just coming, they were already in position. What made the Mura V7 operation revolutionary wasn't just its stealth, but what it was carrying. Each of the 3 Ukrainian USVs had been retrofitted to carry AIM-9M Sidewinder missiles, short-range, heat-seeking air-to-air weapons originally designed to be launched from jet fighters like the F-16 or FA-18. But this time, they weren't being launched from the sky. They were mounted to the decks of surface drones, just 3 feet above sea level. This was not a repurposing, it was a redefinition of the missile's role. To enable this new strike vector, engineers at Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, GUR, overhauled the Sidewinder's sensor logic and lock-on parameters. The infrared seeker was recalibrated for low-angle engagements, optimized to track thermal signatures below 5,000 feet, where Russian Su-30 SMS typically operated during coastal patrols. Special attention was given to atmospheric interference near the sea surface, like heat distortion from waves or reflective glare at dawn. Guidance was triple redundant: military-grade GPS, inertial navigation systems, and a secure optical data link back to the Odessa-based control center. The targeting AI onboard the drones was programmed to detect afterburner exhaust from the AL-31FP engines on Russian fighters, locking onto their heat plumes in the 3.5 micron infrared band. Mounted on launch cradles and hardwired for sea-level ignition, each Sidewinder weighed just over 187 pounds and carried a 20.7-pound blast fragmentation warhead, more than enough to cripple a fighter with a single strike. This setup created a new kind of threat, one that bypassed traditional air defense logic entirely. For decades, militaries expected missiles to rise up toward jets. Now, Ukraine was aiming upward from the ocean surface. Fighter pilots patrolling the Black Sea had trained to scan the sky. But on May 2, the real danger would come from below the horizon, and they never saw it coming. By dawn on May 2, the Mura V7 formation had crossed into the outer edge of Russia's coastal surveillance zone. At 6:03 a.m., Russian naval radar picked up 2 low-speed, low-profile surface contacts moving eastward at roughly 26 miles per hour. They were flagged as possible unmanned surface vessels, but crucially, only 2 of the 3 drones were visible. Unit 3, the command drone, maintained a trailing offset of roughly 1,500 feet, intermittently ceasing transmissions and staying tucked behind sea curvature and radar clutter. From that hidden position, it coordinated the attack. Just under 2 minutes after detection, 2 Su-30 SM fighters scrambled from Krim Air Base, climbing to 4,000 feet before banking southeast to intercept. These jets had dealt with suicide drones before, but none like what was waiting for them. Tail number 04 Red led the formation, descending gradually to line up a strafing run. But as it entered the engagement zone, USV Unit 1 subtly adjusted course 3 degrees to starboard, forcing the Su-30 into a more favorable angle, not for attack, but for targeting. At 6 hours, 7 minutes, and 19 seconds a.m., with the fighter now just 4.2 miles out, and its twin AL-31FP engines in full afterburner, the missile lock was confirmed. From sea level, a 187-pound AIM-9M Sidewinder launched skyward. Its seeker locked onto the thermal plume, tracking in the 3.5 micron infrared band. The Su-30's onboard systems likely gave a late heat warning. The pilot banked left, but it was too late. At 6 hours, 7 minutes, and 22 seconds a.m., the missile struck the left engine nacelle with surgical precision. The explosion shredded the turbine, ruptured the wing root, and sent the jet into a flat spin. The co-pilot ejected and was rescued later by a nearby civilian vessel. The pilot failed to eject and perished as the aircraft slammed into the sea. The strike marked the first time in history that a manned fighter jet was shot down by an air-to-air missile launched from a surface drone. Seconds after Su-30 SM tail number 04 Red was torn from the sky, its wingman 16 Blue reacted with textbook urgency. The pilot banked hard left, dropping altitude to 3,000 feet, and entered a tight pursuit arc behind the remaining visible USV. Russian doctrine treated these surface drones as passive targets, incapable of returning fire. That assumption was about to collapse. USV Unit 2, responding to encrypted orders from the Odessa-based command center, accelerated to 29 miles per hour, closing the distance and luring the Su-30 into range. Its infrared targeting system, already warmed in scanning, acquired a solid lock on the jet's mid-fuselage heat signature, specifically the junction between the fuel tank bay and electronic systems compartment. At 6 hours, 7 minutes, and 48 seconds a.m., the second AIM-9M Sidewinder launched. The missile arced slightly upward, crossing the Su-30's turn angle and striking the right wing near the external ordnance pylon. The resulting explosion produced localized overpressure exceeding 40 psi, strong enough to shear through wing structures and rupture fuel lines. The aircraft immediately lost lift on one side and entered an unrecoverable nose-down dive, plummeting at over 400 miles per hour. Neither the pilot nor co-pilot managed to eject in time. Moments later, the wreckage slammed into the sea, erupting in a fireball that marked the second catastrophic loss within 45 seconds. With their mission complete, all three Mura V-7 USVs initiated final protocol. Each drone transmitted confirmation imagery, coordinates, and system data back to command. Then, without hesitation, they self-destructed, erasing their navigation cores, guidance software, and exterior hulls. There would be nothing for Russia to recover. No warhead fragments, no black boxes, no launch logs. Only the sudden, irreversible loss of two frontline fighters, and a new kind of threat rising silently from the sea. The destruction of two Su-30SM fighters in under a minute sent shockwaves through Russia's Black Sea command structure. Within hours of confirming the loss, Moscow issued an emergency directive. All Su-30 patrol flights in the western Black Sea were suspended for a full 2 weeks. The withdrawal wasn't tactical, it was psychological. Russia had just discovered a blind spot it never planned for: missiles launched from the sea surface. What followed was a flurry of defensive overhauls. Naval engineers were dispatched to install floating barriers, steel mesh nets, and sonar detection grids near critical maritime approaches, especially around Novorossiysk Bay. For the first time since the war began, Russia had to treat the surface of the water as a legitimate launch platform, not just for kamikaze drones, but for precision-guided missile strikes. Flight patterns were also restructured. Low-altitude patrols near the coast were banned, with manned fighter missions pushed back toward inland sectors. Surveillance duties shifted to medium-altitude UAVs and long-range radar stations, placing even more pressure on already overextended systems. The incident forced Russian commanders to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their layered air defense system had been punctured not from above by stealth aircraft or hypersonic missiles, but from below by small, low-speed, nearly invisible drones. For Ukraine, it was a masterstroke of asymmetry. For Russia, it was a doctrine-breaking wake-up call. The Black Sea's airspace, once considered secure at low altitude, now had a new vulnerability. One that moved quietly, crept along the waves, and struck with devastating precision. And for the first time, Russia no longer knew what was lurking just beyond the radar horizon. What unfolded off the coast of Novorossiysk on May 2 wasn't just a tactical ambush, it was a doctrinal detonation. For less than $300,000, Ukraine deployed a trio of sea drones that dismantled over $100 million worth of Russian air power. Two Su-30SM fighters, among the most advanced in Russia's Black Sea arsenal, were destroyed not by rival jets or SAM systems, but by air-to-air missiles launched from the ocean's surface. It was the first time in history such a strike had ever succeeded. But the impact went far beyond dollars or kill counts. With the Su-30 fleet withdrawn and low-altitude air patrols suspended, Russia effectively lost control of the sky below 5,000 feet across the western Black Sea. The zone that once served as a UAV and USV interdiction belt was now a corridor of vulnerability. Ukraine hadn't just eliminated aircraft, it had flipped the script on what air superiority means. This operation marked the emergence of a new warfare doctrine. Victory doesn't require owning the skies, only exploiting the blind spots beneath them. By attacking from the least expected angle below the radar horizon, Ukraine exposed a soft underbelly in Russia's layered defense strategy. And in doing so, it forced a fundamental rethink in how future wars will be fought. In this new paradigm, the battlefield isn't just land, sea, or air. It's what connects them in the shadows.